Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you whenever and wherever you are. My name is James and I've started this small tutorial series as a way of giving something back to a community which has served me so well over the past few years. In the future I hope to be teaching software like this more and more, so these tutorials are really serving as a dry run for that. This tutorial series will focus on geometric and fractal modelling in Cinema 4D, which I think is an often forgotten but interesting capability of this program. I'll mainly be using MoGraph for this, so it would be useful if you had a broadcast or studio edition of Cinema 4D. I'll be using studio version R12. This tutorial series will contain both novice and advanced features, but will hopefully be at a pace that both beginners and experienced users find comfortable. This is what I'll be modelling today, the Menger sponge, named after Carl Menger, who first described it in 1926. It might be pronounced Menger rather than Menger because Carl was Austrian, but I'm not certain, so I'll probably end up saying both. I like the Menger sponge because in theory it has infinite surface area but zero volume, and it's actually remarkably easy to model in Cinema. So, without further delay, let's get started. So here I am in Cinema 4D, and the first thing to note is that as a product designer I like to have my document scale in millimeters, and this is over here in the attribute manager in mode document scale 1 millimeters. The default is meters. Now it doesn't actually matter for the purposes of this tutorial, but just so that you're aware, when you see me dealing with millimeters, by default you might be dealing with meters, or if you've changed it yourself you might be dealing with micrometers, feet, inches. It depends if you're from Mars or not, or the 19th century, in which case what are you doing with a computer? Anyway, the second thing to note is the fact that I do not have an animation timeline down here. I've customized my display because I don't work with animation that much and I find it interfering and gets in the way, so that's not there either. Apart from that, this is just straight up simple cinema. And the first thing I'm going to do to start my modeling is I'm going to click on this blue cube icon here, and that'll give us a cube of dimensions 200 cubed. 200 by 200 by 200, that's the default. The first thing I'm going to do is select the size X and press the 1 key on my numpad to enter the number 1. I don't know how simple to get, sorry guys. I'm going to tab to the size Y, 1, tab to size Z, 1. And now I've got a cube of dimensions 1 by 1 by 1. And I'm going to press the S key on my keyboard so I zoom straight and fit the constraints of the dimensions of the cube in my display. The second thing I need is to actually bring my MoGraph into this. So I'm going to click on the MoGraph word up here and then insert a cloner object. And I'm going to drop my cube into my cloner object, and what that's done is, because the default settings for the cloner is a linear mode of count 3 with a 50 height displacement, it's given me 3 cubes. Now I don't actually want my cubes in a linear pattern like this, so I'm going to change my mode from linear to grid array. Now I actually want to keep my count as 3, but my size I need to change to 2 in every single field, 2, 2, 2, and then S to zoom to the selection. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this clone editable, so it'll give me, rather than one cube being duplicated many times, it'll give me a single cube in per position. And I can do that in many variety of ways in Cinema. The easiest I find is probably to press C on the keyboard, but the most visual would be to go over to this icon here, and this will change our cloner object into a grand total of 27 cubes. It's 27 because it's 9, well it's 3 cubed. 9 times 3, 3 times 3 times 3. Anyway, for this next section what I've done is opened up a new text edit document, and the reason is I need to jot down and make a note of the cubes which I am deleting, because that's literally what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete the relevant cubes in order to make my Menger sponge. And just with the live selection tool I'm going to select the cube, make a note of it, cube 4, there we go, and then delete it. And then go around cube 16, and delete it, and just repeat this for the relevant cubes. 14, I'll keep them in order. So that's 3 of them done. Now the 3 on the other side. Cube 12. Cube 22. Cube 10. And finally the center cube, cube 13. Okay, and now what I've done here is I've created the first iteration of the Menger sponge, because technically the cube is just technically the 0 iteration. So this is the first iteration proper. I'm going to use this as a base to create the larger Menger sponges, the other iterations, the higher up iterations. It's always easier to actually start smaller and get bigger rather than start with a large cube and divide it. So exactly the same again, change my MoGraph from linear to grid, and this time I'm going to do 2 times 3 to give me 6, and then 6 in the others as well. And as a bonus, what I could do is actually rename this iteration 1, just to remind me of where we are. And then exactly the same again, select this cloner object and then simply delete the relevant ones: 4, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16 and 22, because with the way the cloner works it lays them out exactly the same. So in other words, I can quickly and easily delete the relevant cubes. Okay, and that's the second iteration. And just lather, rinse, repeat. It's exactly the same operation for the other iterations. Now, depending on how high you can go, 6 times 3, Q18, will depend on your CPU and your, well, it'll depend on your CPU to actually preview it, like I'm already struggling here. But it will also depend on the available RAM you have. You'll need more RAM to do or to make higher iterations. I can usually handle around iteration 5, but bear in mind that with each iteration you go up, you are multiplying your polygon count by 20, which is fairly hefty. But exactly the same again. This is going to be iteration 3. 4, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16 and 22. This is iteration 3. Okay, I'm actually going to stop there at iteration 3 because it really was struggling to reach iteration 4. But with given enough time, it would quite easily reach it. I can definitely reach iteration 5. I've done it before. And there we have it. There is the Menger sponge, or the Menger sponge, depending on your pronunciation, in Cinema 4D using MoGraph. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to your comments and your questions and your feedback. See you again soon.